Corporate Corpse and Divine Intervention. The news broke on a Wednesday, which Richard had always considered the most treacherous day of the week. He was on his third monster, arguing with Steele about whether the new Layoff lemon pepper flavor violated some obscure FDA labeling regulation when Abu Khalid's 17 monitors simultaneously exploded with breaking news chyrons. Billionaire tech CEO shot dead at Manhattan restaurant. Silicon Valley titan killed in apparent assassination. Former tech worker detained at scene. Sources say laid off years ago. Richard stared at the screens. The room went completely silent. The victim was Preston Hargrove III, founder and CEO of Nexigen Technologies. Net worth $94 billion on a good day, which yesterday had been. Architect of the largest single-mass layoff in American tech history, 34,000 people in one announcement, delivered via a pre-recorded video while Hargrove was reportedly skiing in Verbier. This was the hardest decision of my life. Stay hungry, stay humble. The alleged shooter was a man named Dale Kowalski, 51 years old, former senior engineer at Nexigen, laid off in the 34,000. Had apparently walked into Osteria del Magnifico on 57th Street, ordered the Bronzino, waited for Hargrove to finish his appetizer, and then expressed his performance review feedback in a manner not typically covered in HR training modules. Richard read the details twice. Then he looked at the crew. "Nobody," he said quietly, "say a single fucking word publicly. Not a post, not a comment, not a reaction emoji, nothing. We are ghosts until we understand what this is." "Already getting messages," Abu Khalid said, scrolling rapidly. "Thousands! People are tagging us, calling it—" "I know what they're calling it. The first shot of the—" "I said, I know." Steele, who had gone the color of old printer paper, was reading something on his laptop. "Corpse. It's already started. CNBC has a segment. They're calling Hope Vault a radicalization pipeline. Fox has a graphic, an actual graphic." "Hope Vault? Hate Factory?" "Question marks are the coward's punctuation," Richard said. "Trent is on Bloomberg right now," Abu Khalid said. "Of course Trent is on Bloomberg." On one of the monitors, Trent, whose fund had recovered slightly and who had therefore recovered his confidence, which was a mistake, was sitting very straight in a very expensive suit saying, "What happened today is the direct and predictable consequence of platforms that monetize class warfare and dress it up as economic populism. Hope Vault has been manufacturing rage against job creators for months. You cannot be surprised when—" Richard picked up his phone. Bandera put a hand on his arm. "Don't. I'm not going to do anything stupid." "You have the face you make before you do something stupid." "That's my thinking face." "It's the same face." Richard put the phone down. He walked to the whiteboard instead, picked up a marker, stood there for a moment, then wrote 3 words. Who benefits most? The next 6 hours were a masterclass in how fast a narrative could be weaponized by people who'd been waiting for exactly this kind of ammunition. The Wall Street Journal ran an op-ed, clearly written in under 2 hours, which meant it had been drafted and waiting, titled "The Dangerous Romanticism of Corporate Corpse." It used the words incitement and ecosystem of resentment and the predictable endpoint of grievance politics in a piece that somehow never mentioned that Preston Hargrove III had laid off 34,000 people via a ski resort video. 3 senators, all of whom had received significant campaign contributions from Nexigen's PAC, called for emergency hearings into online platforms that radicalize disaffected workers. One of them used the phrase digital terrorist infrastructure without audible irony. A coalition of 14 tech CEOs published a joint statement expressing grief, solidarity, and in the final paragraph, almost as an afterthought, calling for immediate regulatory action against platforms that deliberately cultivate hostility toward the innovators and risk-takers who drive American prosperity. Richard read that last phrase 4 times. Risk-takers, he said. The man was worth $94 billion. The last risk he took was ordering the Branzino instead of the Seabass. Fucking assholes. We need a response, Steele said. He was in full crisis consultant mode now, pacing, which was actually useful. Not defensive, not apologetic, controlled, strategic. We acknowledge the human tragedy. We separate ourselves clearly from the act. We don't do that, Richard said. Excuse me? We don't issue the statement they're waiting for, the careful, lawyered, we condemn violence in all forms statement that implicitly accepts the premise that we're responsible for this. Richard looked at him. You know what that statement does? It feeds the cycle. It says your accusation landed. It says we're scared. It says we're playing defense. He shook his head. We're not fucking playing defense. Then what are we playing? We're playing quiet, for now. Steele looked like he might have a small aneurysm. You cannot respond to a national crisis with quiet. Fucking watch me. The quiet lasted 11 hours, which in internet time was roughly equivalent to several geological epochs. Then, at a press conference ostensibly about infrastructure spending, a reporter asked the president about Preston Hargrove III. Richard, Steele, Bandera, Natasha, Abu Khalid, Jefe, Senora Esperanza, who had not left because the tamale operation had expanded into the warehouse kitchen and she was running it with the efficiency of a military supply line, and 4 Ukrainian soldiers. All watched the same monitor simultaneously. The president blinked at the question with the expression of a man who had been asked to do long division in a foreign language. Preston, he said. Preston Hargrove. Yes, terrible. Very sad. Very, very sad situation. He paused. The pause went on longer than pauses should. Although, he said. The reporter leaned forward. Although, the president continued, and I've said this before, many people are saying this, very smart people, the smartest. Preston was not, and I think most people know this, not what you'd call a tremendous person. I had dinner with him, it must have been 2019. Beautiful restaurant, fantastic steak, and he spent the entire evening talking about himself. The whole dinner. Never asked me one question. Me? And I'm told, very reliably told, that he once called me, and I have this on very good authority. He called me, and this is a direct quote, a malignant narcissist with the attention span of a golden retriever who'd eaten a Ritalin. The press room made a collective sound that had never previously existed. Which, the president added, coming from a man who fired 34,000 people from a ski slope, is frankly rich, very rich. Richer than his net worth, which, by the way, and I know finances, I know them very well, was significantly overstated. I've seen the real numbers, terrible numbers, sad numbers. He straightened his tie. So, thoughts and prayers. Tremendous loss. Moving on. Mr. President, 17 reporters simultaneously. He also, the president said, apparently unable to stop himself, like a man who had grabbed a live wire and simply had to ride it out, stole my idea for a social media platform in 2021. I had the exact same idea, almost word for word, and suddenly Preston Hargrove has a platform, and where's my credit? Nowhere. That's where. So, thoughts and prayers. Thank you. He walked away from the podium. The press room sat in collective stunned silence for approximately 4 seconds. Then it detonated. In the warehouse, nobody spoke for a long time. Then Señora Esperanza said something in Spanish. "My mother," Heffy said, his voice slightly awed, "says that God has a sense of humor, but she did not previously appreciate the full extent of it." Bandera, who had not smiled in several days, was smiling now. It was a small smile, but it was real. "The Americans," he said, slowly and with great reverence, "are absolutely fucking insane." Steele said, blinking, "He just publicly insulted a murder victim at a condolence press conference." "He did," Richard confirmed. "And called him a thief." "He did, while accepting no questions." "He did." Steele sat down. "I genuinely could not have engineered a better distraction if I had tried for a month." "Nobody could," Richard said. "This is beyond engineering. This is fucking divine intervention." His phone buzzed, a text from Gerald at the White House. "You're welcome." Richard stared at it. "Did you actually?" 3 dots. Then, "No, he just does that. We've stopped trying to understand it. But you've got maybe 48 hours before the story resets. Use them." Richard showed the text to no one, deleted it, and walked to the whiteboard. "All right, we have a window. Let's talk about what Natasha and Bandera actually found, because I have a feeling the Dale Kowalski story is about 12 layers more complicated than a laid-off engineer with a grudge and a reservation at a nice restaurant." The room shifted. Different energy now. The chaotic, reactive energy of the last 24 hours settling into something colder and more focused. Natasha closed 3 of her laptops and opened one specific one. Bandera pulled a chair directly in front of the whiteboard and sat in it backwards, arms folded across the top. "You first," Richard said to Natasha. "No," she said. "Him first, then me. The order matters for what you're about to understand." Richard looked at Bandera. Bandera was quiet for a moment, the kind of quiet that meant he was choosing his words with the care of a man diffusing something. "Dale Kowalski," he said finally, "entered the United States on a tourist visa 14 months ago." Everyone frowned. "He's American," Abu Khalid said. "Born in Ohio. Dale Kowalski from Ohio was born in 1973 and died in a car accident in 2019, Bandera said. "In Columbus. I have the death certificate. My contacts pulled it in 4 hours." The warehouse went very quiet. "The man who walked into that restaurant," Bandera continued, "used Dale Kowalski's identity. Spent 14 months building a legend, social media history, a fake LinkedIn profile with a very convincing employment gap, a Reddit account full of angry posts about Nexigen layoffs." He paused. "Professionally constructed. The kind of construction that takes resources, patience, and significant expertise in American social media patterns." "Russian," Richard said. "That would be the obvious answer," Bandera said. "But the construction methodology is different. The Russians I've seen work, they leave fingerprints, certain patterns. This is cleaner, more patient, different operational signature." "Chinese?" Steele offered. Bandera tilted his head. "Maybe. Not certain." "There's more," Natasha said. Everyone looked at her. She turned her laptop around. On the screen was a corporate ownership diagram, the kind that looked to the untrained eye like someone had dropped a plate of spaghetti on a flowchart. But Richard had spent 25 years reading fucking corporate structures, and he could see the shape of it. "Preston Hargrove's estate," Natasha said, "which is now in probate, controls 43% of a holding company registered in Luxembourg. That holding company owns, through 4 layers of subsidiaries, a 17% stake in a Chinese semiconductor manufacturer that has been on the Hope Vault trader list since month 2. She looked at Richard steadily. We shorted that semiconductor company 6 weeks ago. The short position is substantial. Hargrove's death, combined with the uncertainty around his estate and the inevitable corporate governance chaos, has caused that company's stock to drop 22% since this morning. Silence. A long, heavy silence. Someone, Richard said slowly, killed Preston Hargrove and made money doing it. Significant money, Natasha said. We're tracking at least 9 separate entities that opened short positions in Hargrove-connected assets in the 72 hours before the shooting, all through nominee accounts, all in jurisdictions with minimal disclosure requirements. And here, she said, pulling up another screen, is where it gets fucking farcical. She let the word hang there. Farcical, Richard repeated. 2 of the 9 entities, she said, with the specific tone of a woman who had triple-checked something because she did not believe it the first 2 times, trace back, through a genuinely impressive amount of corporate origami, to a Cayman Islands holding company called, she paused, Valor Patriot Capital, LLC. Steele made a sound. Valor Patriot Capital, Natasha continued, is 40% owned by a Delaware entity called American Worker First Investment Partners. The room stared at her. Which, she said, is the investment vehicle belonging to a consortium of 14 tech CEOs who signed the joint statement this morning calling for Hope Vault to be shut down as a radicalization platform. Total silence. Nobody moved. Then Jaffe, very quietly, Madre de Dios. They killed him, Abu Khalid said. It wasn't a question. It had the tone of a man arranging facts that didn't want to be next to each other. I can't prove they ordered it, Natasha said carefully. What I can prove, to a standard that would interest several federal prosecutors I used to work with, is that they knew it was coming, positioned financially to profit from it, and then immediately used the resulting chaos to attack. Us. She closed the laptop. Someone killed Preston Hargrove. These men didn't pull the trigger, but they appear to have known when to buy puts. Richard stood at the whiteboard for a very long time. He wrote 3 new words under the first 3. Who benefits most? They already did. He turned around. Okay, he said. New problem. We have evidence of what is essentially a coordinated financial conspiracy connected to a murder involving 14 of the most powerful scumbags in American technology who are simultaneously running a public campaign to destroy us. He looked around the room. And if we reveal this, we become the story again. Except now we're not just the radicalization platform. We're the people accusing Silicon Valley scumbag royalty of complicity in murder. Which means we get buried under lawyers. We get investigated by every agency that takes their calls, and the actual story disappears. So we don't go public, Steele said. Not yet. Then what do we do? Richard picked up his monster, finished it, crushed it, looked at Natasha, looked at Bandera, looked at Jefe, who was wearing a jacket with tiny ranch bottles on it and had somehow become one of the most important people in the room, looked at Abu Khalid, looked at Steele. We find the man who actually walked into that restaurant, he said. The real one, not Dale Kowalski from Ohio, the actual fucker. Because right now he's the only loose thread that unravels the whole thing. And whoever sent him is going to be looking for that same thread. He paused. Which means we need to find him first. Bandera nodded slowly. the expression of a man for whom this kind of sentence was, professionally, familiar territory. "I know people," Bandera said. "You always know people." "Different people this time. Darker people." "How much darker?" Bandera considered this. "Let's say the people I usually call are the kind who operate in gray areas. The people I need to call for this operate in areas that don't have a color yet." Richard thought about this. "Call them." Señora Esperanza, who had been listening to all of this while calmly folding tamales with the serenity of a woman who had genuinely seen everything, said something in Spanish without looking up. "My mother," Jefe says that she would like to know if any of these 14 tech executives eat at restaurants regularly, for market research purposes." Everyone looked at Señora Esperanza. She continued folding tamales. Her expression was entirely placid. "For the ranch sauce," she added in perfect, unaccented English. The warehouse stared at her. "You speak English?" Richard said. "I speak 7 languages," Señora Esperanza said pleasantly. "I find it useful to let people assume otherwise." She set down a tamale and looked at Richard with eyes that had, he now realized, been cataloging everything in the room since she arrived. "You have a good operation, Mr. Corpse. Chaotic, but good bones." She picked up another tamale. "You should shorten Exogen's cloud division," she added. "The estate dispute will freeze their enterprise contracts. Give it 2 weeks." Complete silence. No one moved. "Mama," Jefe said carefully, "what exactly did you do before you retired?" Señora Esperanza smiled. "I made tamales," she said. She did not elaborate. Richard looked at Jefe. Jefe shrugged with the expression of a man who had long ago made peace with not knowing everything about his mother. Richard turned back to the whiteboard. Added one more line. "Who benefits most?" "They already did." "Not for long." "All right," he said. "Let's get to work." Outside, the news cycle was doing what it always did, churning, pivoting, consuming itself. The president's press conference was now getting its own news cycle. Trent was on his 4th television appearance of the day, which meant he was running out of things to say and starting to repeat himself, which meant he was about to make another mistake. The 14 tech CEOs had gone very quiet, which was its own kind of signal. And somewhere in the city, or possibly not in the city, possibly in a location that had been carefully selected for exactly this contingency, the man who was not Dale Kowalski from Ohio was waiting for instructions that Richard was now going to make sure never arrived. The warehouse smelled like tamales and coffee and the specific electricity of people who had decided collectively to do something very dangerous and very necessary. It was, Richard thought, not the worst smell in the world. Not even close.